Hi everyone, I am SWRPG Guides and I'm here with a video for you going over an encounter with a Nexu. And I had done a Stormtrooper patrol video recently, so I figured I'd just do another one. This is going to be an ongoing series in the future, and I kind of want to keep these as specific as possible. So I was thinking about just doing kind of like a wild animal, wild creature, encounter video, but I think, each animal is obviously going to be different, and this might be kind of a little bit of insight into kind of how I would run just wild animal encounters in general. And the main point that I would like to make regarding this is really focus on each creature's statistics, their abilities, and kind of go with what the type of creature is and what you might be able to do in order to have fun with an encounter with players. So I think the Nexu, which you might recognize, is from the Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones. In the Geonosis arena, the Nexu is one of the creatures in there. So it is actually native to a planet called, I think, Chalogan, something like that. And it is an animal that lives, in the dense jungle. So I figured I'd go through my process of using the Nexu, with my players. And I think this is a really fun creature to use because it is a stalker, it is a predator, and so you can play with your players. You can kind of use it to really to mess with them. So what I'll do is I will move on. I am in Roll20, and I will move to this page right here and just kind of set up the encounter and what you might want to do to have fun with the Nexu. So in this scenario, we have a group of players who have entered into the jungle. I am actually, in my current campaign, I am running a kind of a jungle endeavor right now, and there's lots of things that I'm trying to put into that that kind of short campaign, because I feel like there's so many opportunities when you're in a jungle. There's so many animals around, there's so many things that you can do, and I think the Nexu Stalker is going to be really, really fun to do. So the first thing that I want to mention, especially when you're in maybe a stressful environment, something that is very scary and has to do with survival, I think you want to focus on fear checks. And this is something that you can use as little or as much as you want. I, for instance, had the players, before they even enter the jungle, do a fear check because they're entering this this vast, very dangerous area. So have the players do probably a discipline check in order to see kind of where their fear levels are at, and that can affect their future actions. You could have maybe setback dice for combat rolls. You could also say, if you do another discipline check in the future, it's going to be a harder roll because you're already scared. So it's kind of like pushing them to the limit. And I think the Nexu is a great way to do that. So the number one way that I would use a Nexu is with perception checks. So as I mentioned, this creature is a stalker. It is going to be stalking its prey, and I think one other thing that you can use with it is have it follow the players for an extended period of time, so that it is kind of, it's always around, it's always watching them. They might not be totally sure when it's going to strike, and you could also have fun with it in that maybe it's stalking a specific character. It could be either like the smallest or weakest character, maybe one that's not very good in combat or at physically small, or you could say if there's a character who had was in combat earlier and maybe their wounds are very low, have them stalk the character with the lowest wound threshold and have it focus on that. And what you could do is have the characters roll for perception, see if they find anything, and then when they roll for perception, you roll against it as the Nexu with stealth. And depending on how the roll goes, they might see it. You can kind of play with that as much as you want. You can set up your own system. So let's say they get a success, right? And you roll as the Nexu for stealth, and you fail. you could, maybe you don't want to give it away yet, but you could say that they see some leaves ruffling in a tree or something like that, and don't give it away. And then if they succeed again, they might see, maybe a shadow of the Nexu. So you don't want to give it all away, right away. But if, let's say, they get a triumph in a perception roll, that might be the point where you are forced as a GM to reveal the Nexu and then have combat. So because it's a stalker, it is going to try to attack when the group is the weakest and when they are also as split up as possible. So you could distract them in certain ways. If you have them walking through a jungle, you could say that there is a mysterious flower, over here that this person wants to go check out. This person's over here looking for, a source of water, and maybe this person has now moved over here, in order to, to kind of examine, a nearby tree, and it has some markings on it or something like that. Just have the players doing their own thing, and eventually you can use that type of situation to have the Nexu, let's say, the Nexu is in this tree, and it kind of sneaks over, and then it might use its pounce attack in order to attack this Nautilus right here. And we'll just look at the stats for the Nexu right now. So it is has a brawn level of 3, which means, it's pretty bulky. Of course, the agility is very high, so it's going to be very fast. And then it's also very cunning. It has 8 soak, which is a very large amount. And it also has, for skills, it has 3 in athletics. So if you are looking to do athletic rolls, maybe it's jumping from one tree to another, you could do that a lot with it. And obviously, when it attacks, it's going to be using the brawl skill for, I think, every single attack. It also has stealth too, so when you do roll those stealth checks against the perception checks from your characters, you should have pretty good pool to work with. And then I also really like this ability, the Fierce Pounce, which you can use. You can use a maneuver to aim. So as long as it's kind of in attack position, let's say it's in the canopy of a tree, it's ready to jump down. You don't have to do any other moves. You can use the aim, and then it gains knockdown on its next attack. So one thing I think that is fun with this is to attack characters with the Nexu, but not start combat. So, which is something that it doesn't say specifically in the book that you can do, but I think it'd be a fun way to kind of, pick off a character and, maybe have the rest of the group not aware of kind of what's happening. Of course, eventually the attention is going to be drawn away, especially if the character is screaming, yelling for help, something like that. But you could really play with a group and have fun with it. So I think the Nexu is just a fantastic way to really have fun with a group as a GM and to make things interesting. And it's also it's like a subplot. So if your characters are in search of some ancient Jedi jungle temple, you could, on the side, as kind of something else to divert their attention away, you could have the Nexu as something else to do. And it's also, when the moment arises where it seems natural to have combat with the Nexu, then that's just another thing for them to do, another battle to have. So it can be really fun. And of course, when they do eventually fight the Nexu, which will happen eventually, then it has 3 attacks. It can do bite, which does, I think, just 4 damage, and then it can also ensnare with that. So that's kind of after you do the Fierce Pounce, you would do a bite to ensnare them and also knock them down. You can also do a claw attack and a tail whip as well. So there's several things that you can do with it. So that's kind of my approach on it. I would also like to mention that you can use dark side points, so if you want to use destiny points, in order to maybe have it drag one of the members away without them hearing it or without them noticing. You could use that as kind of a way, and then eventually the players are going to be aware that something is wrong. You know, one thing you could do is you could write down a note to the player that you're kind of dragging away with the Nexu. Write them a note, let them know what's happening, but they can't, you know, they can't do anything. So the rest of the group is unaware of what's happening, and it kind of let them investigate, see, you know, what might be going on. And then also, let's say the Nexu is stalking them through the trees, and they are distracted by something else. Let's say, you know, this, go back to the roll 20, you know, let's say this character is really examining this flower here, trying to, you know, find its properties, is doing like a xenology check or something like that. Then if he rolls for a perception check, he might be distracted, and you can add setback dice because of that. So this would give the Nexu an advantage. So situationally, figure out as a GM certain opportunities in order to have the Nexu attack, and then, you know, kind of separate the group as much as you can, and you know, see what happens with it. So that's how I would run a Nexu encounter. I think it's one that could be really, really fun for the players. It is super interactive. It is also you know, something that they don't know what's going on, so they're trying to figure it out, and it's just a nice tool to use, I think, in you know, situations. So that's my input on the encounter. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.